Hello everyone, my name is Elijah David, minister of the 12th Hour Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation on the 12th Hour. In the Liberty Hill, Texas, today is August 24, 2013, or it is either 2017. And we're going to start our second service on this Sabbath day with a song entitled Face to Face with Yahshua, My Savior. Face to face with Yahshua, my Savior. Face to face, where will it be? When with the rapture I behold Him, Yahshua, who died for me. Face to face I shall behold Him. Far beyond the starry sky, face to face in all His glory, I shall see Him by and by. Oh, baby, now I see Him, let the darkened veil between. The blessed day is coming, when His glory shall be seen. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry sky. Face to face in all His glory, shall see Him by and by. What a rejoicing in His presence, when all banish grief and pain, when their crooked ways are straightened, and the dark things shall be plain. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry sky. Face to face in all His glory, I shall see Him by and by. Face to face, so blissful moment, face to face to see and know, face to face with my Redeemer, Yahshua, who loves me so. Face to face I shall behold Him, far beyond the starry sky. Face in all His glory, I shall see Him by and by. Hello everyone. Once again now, this is Elijah David. We're going to bring you a new story entitled Three Apostasies, Type and Antitype of the Israel. Once again, that's three apostasies of the typical and antitypical Israel, spiritual Israel today, fleshly Israel back then. Fleshly Israel set the type for the three apostasies. Spiritual Israel has the antitype for the three apostasies in our day, and the spiritual Israel in our day is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, collectively with her daughters, the Davidians and Shepherd Rod, H.E. Harder, and Gilead Center, Kermit, Texas. Now, you're going to find that in the spiritual Israel today, starting in 1844, you're going to find out that there's been 3 apostasies of the Israel today. Before the judgment of the living began, or the third apostasy was at the time in 2002 at Kermit, Texas, the Gilead Center, Kermit, Texas, the Brother Johnson, angel of the 7th candlestick, Laodicea, meaning that he was the last prophet sent to Mama and the Davidian shepherd rod. He was the last prophet sent to the Mama and her daughters. Her daughters are Shepherd Rod, Mount Carmel, and Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist at Gilead Center. That's the daughters of Mama, of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So, all 3 of those feeding pastors apostatized. Okay, starting with the Adventist Church and Bashan, their first feeding pastors. They represented from 1844 to 1890. That's your first apostasy. That's when the Seventh-day Adventist Church apostatized. Number 1. Okay? Now, we're going to, and then the number 2 apostasy was her first daughter, Judah, Davidian, Seventh-day Adventist. From 1930 to 1970, they had a 40-year period. They apostatized at the end of their 40-year period, with the V.T. Hall successor in charge of the candlestick of Laodicea. That's the 7th church, 7th candlestick of the 7. There in Revelation 2 and 3 of the 7 churches, 7 candlesticks, 7 prophets in charge of those candlesticks. Ben Roden was in charge of that candlestick number 7, Laodicea, in 1970 when he apostatized. He apostatized for the shepherd rod. V.T. Hall, if he'd been still alive, he would not have apostatized, no doubt. And then maybe, I don't know. But the thing is, he was laid to rest 15 years earlier, 1955, so we'll never know whether he would have apostatized or not if he went on to the full 40 years of his term. But we know his successor took the mantle from V.T. Hall in 1955, Ben Roden, and he apostatized in 1970 by refusing to move on into the third feeding pasture, Mount Gilead, at Kermit, Texas, with Brother W. Johnson as the new shepherd and the new prophet and the new angel of the 7th candlestick, Laodicea, Revelation 3:14. Okay? Now, having said all that, let's give you the typical apostasies. Let's give you the typical apostasies. And that would be Israel coming out of Egypt. And their first apostasy took place at Kaddish Barneah, which we're going to read about. Patriarchs and Prophets, page chapter 33. Okay. Their second apostasy came actually at the end of 40 years. They apostatized at the beginning of their 40-year sojourn in the wilderness. They're at Kaddish Barneah. When they had Aaron to make that golden calf for them, they wanted to go back to Egypt. So Moses come down and checked the apostasy, and he punished those ringleaders of the apostasy. I think about 14,000 of them died pretty quickly. And then the judgment was pronounced upon them that those that were 20 years and older would not enter into the promised land 40 years later. So, and true to their form, the second apostasy took place at the Jordan. 2 years before Joshua took to him and crossed over into the Jordan. Into the promised land, over the Jordan. Now keep in mind that Moses is still in charge. So Moses was in charge of Israel at the first apostasy at Kaddish Barneah. 40 years later, he's still in charge, or 38 years later, he's still in charge of Israel. When the last of them, 24,000 priests of Israel, seduced by their next door neighbor across the line, and I guess it was the Midianites sent their harlot women into the camp of Israel and seduced about 24,000 priests, purging them out. That was the last purging, going over into the Promised Land 2 years later by the Joshua. Well, where's the third apostasy? At the cross. The Pharisees, house of David, tribe of Judah. The Redeemer and Savior came to them in person, and they rejected him and hung him on the cross. Thirdly, filling out the apostasy for Israel and closing out the Old Testament. Brother Johnson filled out the third apostasy for the Adventist Church in 2002 and closed out the judgment of the dead. And he closed out the third and the antitype of the Pharisees at the cross. Apostasy. Now, the disciples were members of the synagogue, but the Pharisees in charge. But the disciples escaped out of her, and then they were the ones that took the mantle and the commission and the birthright and the charge to take and raise up the new apostolic spiritual Israel and start the New Testament. Okay? So, what are we looking at? 3 apostasies in the type. 3 apostasies in the antitype. Spiritual Israel. Okay, now let us go on here and look at chapter 33, Patriarchs and Prophets by Ellen G. White. It says, the building of the tabernacle was not begun for some time after the Israel arrived at the Sinai. And the sacred structure was first set up at the opening of the 2nd year from the Exodus. This was followed by the consecration of the priests. For the celebration of the Passover, the numbering of the people, and the completion of the various arrangements essential unto their civil or religious system, so that nearly a year was spent in the encampment at the Sinai. Here their worship had taken a more definite form. Laws had been given for the government of the nation, and a more efficient organization had been effected preparatory unto their entrance into the land of the Canaan. For the government of Israel was characterized by the most thorough organization, wonderful alike for its completeness and its simplicity. For the order so strikingly displayed in the perfection and arrangement of all of the Elohim's created works was manifested in the Hebrew economy. For the Yeshua, the Son, was the center of the authority and government. He's the center of it. He's the one that is the commanding general of his Father. He's the commanding general of the armies of Israel here on earth. Okay. Just like King Saul, the first king of Israel, made David his commanding general in charge of the army of Israel. Yeshua's come now and again chose the antithetical David, Elijah David, and made him his commanding general. And Moses stood as their visible leader. By the Elohim's appointment unto the administer of the laws in his name from the elders of the tribes, a council of 70 was afterwards chosen to assist Moses in the general affairs of the nation. Next came the priest who consulted the Yeshua in the sanctuary. For the chiefs or princes ruled over the tribes. Under these were captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50, and captains over 10, and lastly officers who might be employed for the special duties. Deuteronomy 1:15. For the Hebrew camp was arranged in the exact order. It was separated into the three great divisions, each having its appointed position in the encampment. In the center was the tabernacle, the abiding place of the invisible king. Around it were stationed the priests and Levites. Beyond these were encamped all the other tribes. For the Levites was committed unto the charge of the tabernacle and all that pertained thereto, both in the camp and on the journey. When the camp set forward, they were to strike the sacred tent. When a halting place was reached, they were to set it up. No person of another tribe was allowed to come near on the pain of death. For the Levites were separated into the three divisions, and the two descendants of the three sons of Levi, and each was assigned its special position and work. In the front of the tabernacle, the nearest unto it, were the tents of the Moses and Aaron. On the south were the Kohathites, whose duty it was to care for the ark and the other furniture. On the north, Merarites, who were placed in the charge of the pillars, sockets, boards, etc. in the rear, the Gershonites, and to whom the care of the curtains and the hangings was committed. For the position of each tribe also was specified. Each was to march and then camp beside its own standard. As the Yahweh had commanded, every man of the children of Israel shall preach by his own standard. And actually, this is Yahshua commanding. As I said, Yahshua was the center of their sojourn out of Egypt. He was the one that went down with Moses to lead them out of it. So Yahshua's rule was with the children of Israel all through that 40 years of wilderness wandering. He was the commanding general. Yahweh the Father was up in heaven commanding the universe from the great white throne on the sides of the north. Okay, so it says, for the position of each tribe also was specified. Each was to march and then camp beside its own standard. As the Yahweh had commanded, every man of the children of Israel shall pitch by his own standard with the ensign of their father's house. Now, the ensign is a banner, and it has the certain insignia on it that to recognize each tribe for who they were. Judah had a banner with the lion on it, the lion of the tribe of Judah. That was their ensign. Okay. That's the reason why it says in Isaiah 11, in these last days, is you shall, Judah, the house of David, is going to set up an ensign for the nations. In other words, they're going to set up the standard of the lawgiver. And Yahshua is going to be the one there. That's the standard that they're going to set it up by. Yahshua's standard. Every man in his place by their standards. Numbers 2, 2, and 17. For the mixed multitude that had accompanied Israel from Egypt were not permitted to occupy the same quarters with the tribes, but were to abide upon the outskirts of the camp, and their offspring were to be excluded from the community until the third generation. Deuteronomy 23, 7 and 8. Scrupulous cleanliness as well as strict order throughout the encampment and its environs was enjoined. Thorough sanitary regulations were enforced. Every person who was unclean from any cause was forbidden to enter the camp. For these measures were indisputable. Were indispensable. Yeah, for these measures were indispensable for the preservation of the health among so vast a multitude. And it was necessary also that the perfect order and purity be maintained, that the Israel might enjoy the presence of a holy Elohim. Thus he declared, Yahweh the Elohim walketh in the midst of thy camp to deliver thee, and to give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy. And all the journeyings of the Israel, the ark of the covenant of the Yahweh went before them. The sword shall be resting place for them. Numbers 10:33. Born by the sons of the Kohath, the sacred chest containing Elohim's holy law was to lead the band. Before it went, Moses and Aaron and the priests bearing silver trumpets were stationed near. For these priests received direction from the Moses, which they communicated unto the people by the trumpets. It was the duty of the leaders of each company to give definite directions concerning all the movements to be made, as indicated by the trumpets. Whosoever neglected to comply with the directions given was punished with the death. Elohim is an Elohim of the order. Everything connected with the heaven is in the perfect order. Subjection and thorough discipline mark the movements of the angelic host. Success can only attend order and harmonious action. But Elohim requires order and system in his work now, no less than in the days of the Israel. All who are working for him are to labor intelligently, not in a careless, haphazard manner. He will have his work done with the faith and exactness that he may place the seal of his approval upon it. For Elohim himself directed the Israelites in all their travels. For the place of their encampment was indicated by the descent of the pillar of the cloud. And so long as they were to remain in the camp, the cloud rested over the tabernacle. When they were to continue their journey, it was lifted high above the sacred tent. For a solemn invocation marked both the halt and the departure. For it came to pass when the ark set forward, that the Moses said, Rise up, Yahweh, and let thine enemies be scattered. And let them that hate thee flee before thee. And when it rested, he said, Return, O Yahweh, unto the many thousands of Israel. Numbers 10:35-36. For a distance of only 11 days' journey lay between Sinai and Kaddish, on the borders of Canaan, and it was with the prospect of the speedily entering into the goodly land that the host of the Israel resumed their march, and the cloud at last gave the signal for an onward movement. For Yahweh had wrought wonders in the bringing of them from the Egypt, and what blessings they might they have that they not expected now, that they had formerly covenanted to accept him as their sovereign, and had been acknowledged as the chosen people of the Most High. Yet it was almost with the reluctance that many left the place where they had so long encamped, for they had come almost to regard it as their home. Within the shelter of those granite walls, Elohim had gathered his people, apart from all other nations, to repeat unto them his holy law. For they loved to look upon the sacred mount, on whose hoary peaks and barren ridges the divine glory had so often been displayed. For the same was so closely associated with the presence of the Elohim and holy angels, but it seemed too sacred to be left thoughtlessly, or even gladly, at the signal from the trumpeters. However, the entire camp set forward, the tabernacle born in the midst, and each tribe in its appointed position, under its own standard. All eyes were turned anxiously to see in what direction the cloud would lead as it moved toward the east, where were only mountain masses huddled together, black and desolate, a feeling of the sadness, and doubt arose in many hearts. As they advanced, the way became more difficult. Their route lay through stony ravine and barren waste. All around them was a great wilderness, a land of the deserts and of the pits, a land of the drought and of the shadow of the dead, a land that no man passed through, and where no man dwelt. Jeremiah 2:6. For the rocky gorges, far and near, were thronged with the men, women, and children, with the beasts, and wagons, and long lines of the flocks and herds. So the progress was necessarily slow and toilsome. And the multitudes, after their long encampment, were not prepared to endure the perils and discomfort of the way. After 3 days' journey, open complaints were heard. These originated with the mixed multitude, many of whom were not fully united with the Israel. And that mixed multitude were your Egyptians. Okay, now keep that in mind. That was your descendants of Ishmael, the firstborn of Abraham by the flesh, where Yahweh told Abraham that Ishmael and his seed would not have heir with Isaac by the promise, and his heir. But they would not be heir with the house of Israel in the promised land. And so here you have it. This mixed multitude said, yeah, we are too. We're going to go with Israel to the promised land. But they started murmuring and grumbling, and look what happened to them. They didn't make it to the promised land. For the complainers were not pleased with the direction of the march, and they were continually finding fault with the way in which Moses was leading them. Though they well knew that he, as well as they, was following the guiding cloud. Dissatisfaction is contagious, and it soon spread in the encampment. Again they began to clamor for the flesh to eat. Though abundantly supplied with the manna, they were not satisfied, for the Israelites during their bondage into Egypt had been compelled to subsist on the plainest and simplest food. But then keen appetite, induced by the privation and hard labor, had made it palatable. Many of the Egyptians, however, who were now among them, had been accustomed to a luxurious diet, and these were the first to complain. At the giving of the manna, just before Israel reached Sinai, Yahweh had granted them flesh in the answer unto their clamors, but it was furnished to them for only 1 day. Elohim might as easily have provided them with the flesh as with the manna, but a restriction was placed upon them for their good. It was his purpose to supply them with the food better suited unto their wants than the feverish diet unto which many had become accustomed in Egypt. For the perverted appetite was to be brought into a more healthy state, that they might enjoy the food originally provided for the man, for the fruits of the earth, which Elohim gave unto Adam and Eve in Eden. It was for this reason that the Israelites had been deprived, in a great measure, of the animal food. For the Satan tempted them to regard this restriction as unjust and cruel. He caused them to lust after their forbidden things, because he saw that the unrestrained indulgence of the appetite could tend to produce sensuality. And by this means the people could be more easily brought under his control. For the author of the disease and misery will assail man where he can have the greatest success. Through the temptations addressed unto the appetite, he has, to a large extent, led men and to the sin from the time when he induced Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit. It was by this same means that he had led Israel to murmur against the Elohim for the intemperance in the eating and drinking, leading as it does to the indulgence of the lower passions, prepares the way for men to disregard all moral obligation. When assailed by the temptation, they have little power of the resistance. Elohim brought the Israelites from Egypt that he might establish them in the land of the Canaan, a pure, holy, and happy people. In the accomplishment of this object, he subjected them to a course of the discipline, both for their own good and for the good of their posterity. Had they been willing to deny appetite and the obedience unto his wise restrictions, feebleness and disease would have been unknown among them, and their descendants would have possessed both physical and mental strength. They would have had clear perceptions of the truth and duty, keen discrimination and sound judgment, but their unwillingness to submit unto the restrictions and requirements of the Elohim prevented them to a great extent from reaching the high standard which he desired them to attain, and from receiving the blessing which he was ready to bestow upon them. Today the psalmist, they tempted Elohim in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against Elohim. They said, Can Elohim furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock, that the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. And he give bread also. Can he provide flesh for his people? Wherefore the Yahweh heard this and was wroth. Psalm 78, 18-21. Murmuring and tumults had been frequent during the journey from the Red Sea unto the Sinai. In the pity for their ignorance and blindness, Elohim had not then visited the sin with a judgment. But since that time he had revealed himself unto them at the Horeb. They had received great light as they had been witnesses unto the majesty, the power, and the mercy of the Elohim, and their unbelief and discomfort or discontent incurred the greatest guilt. Furthermore, they had coveted to accept Yahshua as their king. This is the Son, because they knew who Yahshua was. They were introduced to him down in Egypt. He was at one of the clouds. Moses introduced Yahshua to the children of Israel down in Egypt. And they were still under Pharaoh, and he went down there to get them out. Okay. So it says, furthermore, they had covenanted to accept Yahshua as their king. So there it is. Yahshua was the king of Israel, and that kingship started right there coming out of Egypt. That's when Yahshua took that position of the king of Israel. Okay. Because it says right here that the children of Israel had made a covenant to accept Yahshua as their king and to obey his authority. So this is Yahshua doing the talking, all the way through that 40 years of wilderness wandering. For their murmuring was now rebellion, and as such it must receive receive prompt and signal punishment. If the Israel was to be preserved from anarchy and ruin, for the fire of the Yahshua burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. But the most guilty of the complainers were slain by the lightning from the cloud. For the people in the terror besought Moses to entreat the Yahshua for them. He did so. And the fire was quenched. In the memory of this judgment, he called the name of the place Taberah, a burning. Now, isn't this amazing? Yahshua is right there in their midst. And Moses didn't have to go any further than that cloud. Right above them. Hovering above them. Right there. All Moses had to do is communicate with Yahshua in that cloud right above them. Okay. But the evil was soon worse than before. Instead of leading the survivors to the humiliation of repentance, this fearful judgment seemed only to increase their murmuring. In all the directions the people were gathered at the door of their tent, weeping and lamenting. For the mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. The children of Israel also wept again, and said, Who shall give us flesh to eat? You remember the fish which we did eat in the Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melon, and the leeks and the onion, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna, before our eyes. Thus they manifested their discontent with the food provided for them by their Creator, yet they had constant evidence that it was adapted unto their wants. For, notwithstanding the hardships they endured, there was not a feeble one in all their tribes. For the heart of Moses sank, he had pleaded that Israel should not be destroyed, even though his own posterity might then become a great nation. In his love for them, he had prayed that his name might be blotted from the book of the life rather than that they should be left to perish. He had impelled all for them, and this was their response. All their hardships, even their imaginary sufferings, they charged upon him, and their wicked murmurs made doubly heavy the burden of the care and responsibility under which he staggered. In his distress, he was tempted even to distrust Elohim. Now, we say to distrust Elohim. That wasn't distrusting Elohim. Moses was talking about to distrust Yeshua, his son, that he was working with there on the scene. For his prayer was almost a complaint. Wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Which should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, Give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it is too heavy for me. For the Yahweh hearkened unto his prayer and directed him to summon 70 men of the elders of the Israel. Men had not only advanced in the years, but possessing dignity, a sound judgment, and experience, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, he said, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee. But thou bear it not thyself alone. For the Yahweh permitted Moses to choose for himself the most skillful, faithful, and efficient men to share the responsibility with him. For their influence would assist in the holding and the check the violence of the people and quelling the insurrection. Yet serious evils would eventually result from their promotion. They would never have been chosen had Moses manifested faith corresponding unto the evidences he had witnessed of the Elohim's power and goodness. But he had magnified his own burdens and services, almost losing sight of the fact that he was only the instrument of which Elohim had wrought. He was not excusable in the indulgent in the slightest degree. For the spirit of murmuring that was the curse of Israel, and he relied fully upon Elohim, the Yahweh would have guided them continually and would have given him strength for every emergency. Moses was directed to prepare the people for what Elohim was about to do for them. Sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh, for you have wept in the ears of the Yahweh, saying, Who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore, the Yahweh will give you flesh, and you shall eat. You shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but even a whole month until it come out at your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that you have despised the Yeshua, you have despised the Yeshua which is among you. Now see, Yahweh is saying that the Father, he's telling the people, he says, because you despise my son Yeshua which is among you, which you have made a covenant with him, that you would serve him because and accept him as your king, and now, because you have despised him now, which is among you, he's among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? Okay. Now the people among whom I am, exclaimed Moses, are 600,000 footmen. And thou hast said, I will give them flesh, that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them? For that Moses was reproved for his distress. Is the Yahweh's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. For the Moses repeated unto the congregation the words of the Yahshua, actually this is Yahshua talking, and announced the appointment of the 70 elders. For the great leaders charged unto these chosen men might well serve as a model of the judicial integrity for the judges and legislatures of the modern time. Hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother, and the stranger that is with you. You shall not respect persons in the judgment, but you shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid of the face of men, for the judgment is the Elohim. Deuteronomy 1:16 and 17. Now Moses now summoned the 70 into the tabernacle. And the Yahshua came down in a cloud. Now, where was Yahshua at? He was in that cloud above them by the day and by night. So now Yahshua came down in a cloud out of that place in the first heaven, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease, like the disciples on the day of Pentecost. They were endued with the power from on high. For it pleased Yahweh thus to prepare them, or the Yahshua, it pleased Yahshua, the King, that was amongst them, thus to prepare them for their work and to honor them in the presence of the congregation, that the confidence might be established in them as a men divinely chosen to unite with the Moses and the government of the Israel. Okay. Again, evidence was given of the lofty, unselfish spirit of the great leader. Two of the 70, humbly counting themselves unworthy of the so responsible position, had not joined their brethren at the tabernacle. But the Spirit of the Elohim came upon them where they were, and they too exercised the prophetic gift. On being informed of this, Joshua desired to check such irregularity, fearing that it might tend for the division, jealousy, for the honor of the master. My master Moses, he said, forbid them. But the answer was, enviest thou for my sake? Would Elohim, that all the master's people were prophets, and that the Yahshua would put his Spirit upon them. For a strong wind blowing from the sea now brought flocks of the quail, about a day's journey on this side and a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and about 2 cubits above the face have he heard. Numbers 11:31. All that day and night, and the following day, the people labored in the gathering of the food were righteously provided, for the immense quantities were secured. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and all that were not needed for present use was preserved by the drying, so that the supply, as promised, was sufficient for a whole month. But Elohim gave the people that which was not for their highest good, because they perished in the desiring it, or they persisted in the desiring it. He would not be satisfied with those things that would prove to benefit prove a benefit unto them. For their rebellious desires were gratified, but they were left to suffer the result. For they feasted without restraint, and their excesses were speedily punished. So Yahshua smote the people with a very great plague. Large numbers were cut down by the burning fever. While the most guilty among them were smitten in sin as they tasted the food for which they had lusted. At Hazeroth, the next encampment after leaving Taberah, a still more bitter trial awaited Moses. Aaron and Miriam had occupied a position of the high honor and leadership in the Israel. Both were endowed with the prophetic gift, and both had been divinely associated with Moses in the deliverance of the Hebrews, and sent before thee Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Micah 6:4. Or the words of the Yahweh, or actually the words of Yahshua, by the prophet Micah. So Yahshua is the author of the written word of the Old and New Testament. So anytime you read anything from the Scriptures in the form of a written word, that's Yahshua's voice speaking through that. Miriam's force of the character had been early displayed when as a child she watched beside the Nile, the little basket in which was hidden the infant Moses. For self-control and attack, Elohim had made instrumental in the preserving of the deliverer of his people. Richly endowed with the gifts of the poetry and music, Miriam had led the women of Israel in the song and dance on the shore of the Red Sea. In the affections of the people and the honor of the heaven, she stood second only unto Moses and Aaron. But the same evil that first brought discord in the heavens sprang up in the heart of this woman of Israel, and she did not fail to find a sympathizer in her dissatisfaction. In the appointment of the 70 elders, Miriam and Aaron had not been consulted, and their jealousy was excited against the Moses. At the time of the Jethro's visit, while the Israelites were on the way to Sinai, the ready acceptance by the Moses of the counsel of his father-in-law had aroused in Aaron and Miriam a fear that his influence with the great leader exceeded theirs. In the organization of the council of the elders, they felt that their position and authority had been ignored. Miriam and Aaron had never known the weight of the care and responsibility which had rested upon the Moses, yet because they had been chosen to aid him, they regarded themselves as sharing equally with him the burden of the leadership, and they regarded the opponent of the further assistance as uncalled for. For the Moses felt the importance of the great work committed unto him as no other man had ever felt it. For he realized his own weakness, and he made Elohim his counselor. Aaron esteemed himself more highly and trusted less in Elohim. He had failed when entrusted with the responsibility of giving evidence of the weakness of his character by his base compliance in the matter of the idolatrous worship at the Sinai. But Miriam and Aaron blinded by the jealousy and ambition, lost sight of this. Aaron had been highly honored by the Elohim in the appointment of his family unto the sacred office of the priesthood. Yet even this now added unto the desires for the self-exaltation. They said, well, hath the Yahshua, the son, the king of Israel, indeed spoken only by the Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? Regarding themselves as equally favored by the Elohim, they felt that they were entitled unto the same position and authority. Yielding unto the spirit of the dissatisfaction, Miriam found cause of the complaint in the events that Elohim had especially overruled. For the marriage of the Moses had been displeasing unto her, that he should choose a woman of another nation. instead of taking a wife from among the Hebrews, was an offense on her family and national pride. For the Sephora was treated with the ill disguised contempt. This is Moses' wife. Okay. Though called a Cushite woman, Numbers 12:1, the wife of Moses was a Midianite, and thus a descendant of Abraham. In the personal appearance, she differed from the Hebrews in being of a somewhat darker complexion. Though not an Israelite, Zipporah was a worshiper of the true Elohim. She was of a timid, retiring disposition, gentle and affectionate, and greatly distressed at the sight of the suffering. And it was for this reason that Moses, when on the way to Egypt, had consented to her return to Midian. He desired to spare her the pain of witnessing the judgments that were to fall on the Egyptians. When the Sephora rejoined her husband in the wilderness, she saw that his burdens were wearing away his strength, and she made known her fears of Jezreel. Who suggested measures for his relief. Here was the chief reason for the man's antipathy unto Sephora. Smarting under the supposed neglect shown on herself and Aaron, she regarded the wife of Moses as a cause, concluding that her influence had prevented him from taking them into his counsels as formerly. Had the Aaron stood up firmly for the right, he might have checked the evil. But instead of showing Miriam the sinfulness of her conduct, he sympathized with her, listened to her words of the complaint, and thus came to share her jealousy. Okay, we got about 5 or 6 more minutes to go here. For their accusations were borne by the Moses in the uncomplaining silence. It was the experience gained during the years of the toil and waiting in the meeting. The spirit of humility and long-suffering there developed that prepared Moses to meet with the patience, the unbelief and murmuring of the people, and the pride and envy of those who should have been his unswerving helpers. Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth, and this is why he was granted divine wisdom and guidance above all others. Says the Scripture, the meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. Psalms 25:9. For the meek are guided by the Yahshua. That's what it says. The meek shall inherit the earth. That was a part of the Sermon on the Mount. Yahshua gave there in Matthew chapter 5. Okay. It says, the meek shall inherit the earth. Because they are teachable, willing to be instructed. They have a sincere desire to know and to do the will of the Elohim. For the Savior's promise is, if any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine. John 7:17. And he declares by the Apostles James, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of the Elohim. That giveth unto all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. James 1:5. But his promise is only unto those who are willing to follow the Yahshua holy. Elohim does not force the will of any. Hence he cannot lead those who are too proud to be taught, who are bent upon having their own way. Of the double-minded man, he who seeks to follow his own will, while professing to do the will of the Elohim, it is written, but not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Yahshua, James 1:7. For the Elohim had chosen Moses and had put his spirit upon him, and the Miriam and Aaron, and by their murmurings were guilty of the disloyalty, not only unto their appointed leader, but unto the Elohim himself. That's the Father. The seditious worshippers were summoned unto the tabernacle, and brought face to face with the Moses. As the Yahshua came down in the pillar of the cloud, and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, their claim unto the prophetic gift was not denied. For the Yahshua might have spoken unto them in the visions and dreams. Verily unto Moses whom the Yahshua himself declared faithful in all mine house. Now the house of Israel is Yahshua's house now, directly. He's the one that shed his blood for it, so that house belongs to him. A nearer communion had been granted. With him Elohim spake, Yahshua spake mouth to mouth with him, the king, Yahshua. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Yahshua was kindled against him, and he departed. For the cloud disappeared from the tabernacle, and the token of the Yahshua's displeasure, and Miriam was smitten. She became leprous, white as snow. Aaron was spared, but he was severely rebuked in the Miriam's punishment. Now their pride umber in the dust. Aaron confessed their sin and entreated that his sister might not be left to perish by that loathsome and deadly scourge. And he answered unto the prayers of the Moses. The leprosy was cleansed. Miriam was, however, shut out of the camp for 7 days. Not until she was banished from the encampment did the symbol of the Elohim's favor again rest upon the tabernacle. Same thing today. We've got people that it's going to have to be turned loose out of the tabernacle. They won't obey those that have the rule over them. That includes Alan DeLong and Sharon. They both are marching their own drumbeat. So this is what we come down to, folks. I've already given notice on the other people residing here, the strangers that's within our gates. I give notice today. To find another place and we'll help them move. Okay, in the respect for her high position and in the grief at the blow that had fallen upon her, the whole company abode in the Hazeroth awaiting her return. For the manifestation of the Yahshua displeasure was designed to be a warning unto all Israel, to check the growing spirit of discontent and insubordination. If Miriam's envy and dissatisfaction had not been signally rebuked, it would have resulted in a great evil. Envy is one of the most satanic traits that can exist in the human heart, and it is one of the most baleful in its effects. Says the wise man, wrath is cruel, and anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Proverbs 27:4. For it was envy that first caused discord in the heaven, and its indulgence had brought untold evil among the men. Where envy and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. James 3:16. This brings the close of our study this hour. Contact us at the 11th hour call. We're going to close this service now with a song entitled Sing the Light. The call come ringing o'er the restless waves. Send the light, send the light. There are souls to rescue, there are souls to save. Send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed God.